Hello, Tim Tucker here from United Way Central Ohio Tax Time Training. This video is part 2 in our series on Ohio School District income tax. In this video, we will cover some basic traditional and earned income scenarios. In this video, we will complete an SD-100 for a return which includes traditional school district tax, as well as a return which includes earned income school district tax. We'll also gain an understanding of how to read the completed SD-100 to see if it's correct. We will be focusing on basic school district scenarios that don't involve a lot of complications. In future videos, we will deal with some more nuanced and complicated cases. For our first example, we will deal with a traditional school district tax. In this example, we have Jim Brown, who's a full-year Reynoldsburg resident. All his income is from a single W-2 job. His employer withheld school district tax for the Reynoldsburg City School District, which is the code 2509. You can see on the W-2 here in the local section, there is a local wages and local income tax for 2509. Not to be confused with the local wages and the local income tax for the Reynoldsburg municipality. Those are two totally separate entities. Our first step, if it has not already been done, is to look up the taxpayer in the Ohio Finder to see if he is living in a taxing school district. In this case, you can see the results of the Finder. We can see that he's in the Reynoldsburg City School District, and there is a non-zero percentage shown for the school district. So we know it's a taxing school district. We can also see the county that this taxpayer is in, which is Franklin. Next, we prepare the federal and the Ohio return tax layer as normal. I'm not going to go through that because you all know how to do that. Just keep in mind that it's best practice to list the school district withholding on the W-2 as the last entry in the local state entry. I'll also mention that you should see our FAQ on the Ohio School District Tax. There will be a link in the description below this video. So now let's go ahead and open TaxSlayer and see how to add the SD-100 for this case. We have generated the federal and Ohio return. Now let's go ahead and add the SD-100. First, I'll quickly show you the W-2 that we added. You can see that we have the local wages for the Reynoldsburg School District. You can notice that we also have a local entry for Reynoldsburg Municipality. And just keep in mind that the municipality and the school district are totally separate entities. So to enter the SD-100, we will go into the state return and click localities and click on Ohio SD-100. The only choice here is resident. This is meaningless. You always have to check this. I'll even think about it. Then the county lived in for the majority of the year. This should always be the same as what you checked on the Ohio return. And for the school district information, we will add the Reynoldsburg City School District. To do that, we'll select the county again, which is Franklin, which narrows down the choices of the school districts. And one thing to point out here, which may not be obvious, the Ohio return, the IT 1040 and the Ohio SD-100 are totally separate entities. That's why the county and school district on one have nothing to do with the county and school district on the other, and they have to be repeated. So now that we've selected the Reynoldsburg City School District, we will select the residency status. And in this example, the simple example, we were a full year resident. We'll click continue. There's nothing else that needs to be done for a full year traditional school district entry. So we will now get back out to the Ohio, the federal return by clicking continue and back as many times as we need to. And let's go back to the state section and let's take a look at the PDF of the return by clicking the printer icon here. This will just generate just Ohio, which is a little bit quicker. And scroll down to the SD100 return. And so what we see here is our taxpayer lived in Reynoldsburg School District the entire year. It's got something called a residency factor, which is 1 for a full year resident. Then, since this is a traditional school district, we go to the traditional tax base schedule, which starts at line 22. And this tax base for traditional is automatically calculated by TaxSlayer. It's basically, it comes from line 5 of the SD100. Line 5 is the Ohio adjusted gross income minus exemptions. It would also add back in adjustments like self-employment deduction. But in this case, it's just simply it's going to be the federal adjusted gross income, which in this case is Ohio AGI minus the exemption. So that's the taxable base. The Reynoldsburg tax percentage gets applied to it, and it shows the tax liability is $138. That gets brought back up to line 6 of the SD100. And if you recall, the W-2 showed there were $150 of withholding for the school district, and that means this taxpayer is going to get a refund of $12. For example 2, we will take a look at an earned income school district tax. In this example, our Jim Brown now lives in Plain City, which is part of the Jonathan Alder City School District. All of his income is from one W-2 job, and you can see in the local section of the W-2 there was some withholding from his employer for the school district. We have added the federal and Ohio return. Now let's go ahead and add the SD100. Before that, I'll quickly show you what the W-2 looks like that we entered. As you can see, it shows the local wages for the Jonathan Alder School District with some withholding. There's also local wages for the Plain City municipality. And again, these are two totally separate entities. And by the way, when we looked up this address in the Finder, you can see it showed us the county of Madison and the school district and the school district tax rate. So let's go into the state return and add the SD100. By clicking localities and SD100, resident. The county lived in is the same as what we specified for the Ohio return. In this case, it is Madison County. And let's add the Jonathan Alder School District. So again, we'll select the county Madison to narrow down the school districts and then specify Jonathan Alder. The residency status is going to be resident. And for the simple case that we have here, where the W-2 listed the local income for the school district, there's no other modifications are needed. I'm going to talk a little bit more later as to why you probably will need to go into this earned income tax base section for earned income school district taxes. But let me continue on, and that'll be clearer later on. So let me back out of the Ohio return. And I'm going to hit continue one more time to see if there were any errors that popped up. No, there's not. So let me go back to the state section, generate the PDF. Okay, scroll down to the SD100. And we see our taxpayer lived in Jonathan Alder the entire year. Since this is an earned income school district, we're going to look at the earned income tax base section. And TaxSlayer properly populates the wages earned because local wages were included in the W-2. There's also a kind of a funny calculation that Ohio does here. They also look at the amount of modified adjusted gross income, and they take the lesser of the wages versus the modified adjusted gross income. In this case, the MAGI is a little bit lower, so that's going to be used for the tax base. This is the percentage tax, and so we end up having a liability of 375, which gets carried back to the SD100. We had some withholding of on the W2 of 325, and so the net amount owed is $50, and that also shows up in the return summary screen. I want to go into a little bit more detail on something I mentioned earlier, which is that TaxSlayer often gets the amount of earned income tax base incorrect. That's the value that shows up on line 29 in the SD100. To do that, I'm going to go into my W2 and edit it. And what's not too infrequently what we see is that the employer does not withhold school district tax for the employee. And so we don't have a entry for the that school district. So let me just show you what the W-2 looks like now that we put into TaxSlayer. So you can see we have the Plain City municipality, but we don't have any withholding for the school district, which is, again, it's not too uncommon. So now if we go into TaxSlayer and look at the SD100, you might have noticed here that the school district tax just went down to 0. And the reason is because the value that TaxSlayer populates on line 29 is going to be based on, the only way it's going to know that there is school district income to be taxed if there are entries in the W-2 for that particular school district. So you can see that in the earned income section, there is nothing on line 29. And if we went in and edit it, TaxSlayer actually does have some comments that give us some clues. So let me edit that. The earned income tax base. It says enter wages and salaries, if any, earned while a resident of an earned income school district. This field is an override if you wish the system to calculate this for you based on your W-2s and leave it blank. So in this case, our W-2s don't have enough information in order to populate this. So we would have to manually put in our 3750. And at this point, it should correct that. You can see that it's still thinking, hasn't calculated the school district tax yet. Yeah, now we can see that the school district amount owed is 375. It's because there was no withholding, and now it's properly calculating the tax base. So now if we go back to the SD100, we see our override got properly put in here. So that's just something to keep in mind. What the general recommendation is if it's an earned income school district tax, it's best to assume that whatever TaxSlayer puts on line 29 by default is going to be incorrect, and we have to either check it to make sure it's right or override it with the proper value. In order to provide a little bit more clarification, let's talk about how TaxSlayer determines the school district income tax base. For the traditional school district income tax base, the line 22 income is based on the Ohio MAGI, which is based on the Ohio AGI, which is based on the federal AGI. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether or not the W-2s include any local income entry. The AGI is going to be the AGI regardless of any kind of local income or withholding specified. However, for the earned income school district income tax base, the line 29 income that TaxSlayer uses by default is based on the income listed on the W-2 or W-2s for that SD locality. In other words, if the W-2 does not have a local income listed for that school district, line 29 will be zero. This is why it's always best to start with the assumption that line 29 is wrong until you can prove otherwise. Thanks for watching part 2 of this video series. Please continue on with parts 3 and beyond. Links to our FAQs and useful websites are posted in the description below this video. If you've got questions or comments, you can leave a comment on this YouTube channel, or you can ping me on Slack or send email to timmythetaxman@gmail.com.